Oh, I'm lucky. Glad you were here. Sorry about the little chair.
When I'm like, Thank you all for coming. I'm trying to decide where best to stand because I'm being filmed, which is a bit embarrassing, but let's just move that like that so I can actually talk to you guys instead of the camera. Welcome to our Read Write Inc workshop. We wanted to get you all together because Read Write Inc is the approach that we use as a school to teach phonics. But I think when we all think about back to how we learn to read and write at school, phonics probably wasn't a big part of things, and actually even as teachers, since we've had the training in this particular programme of phonics in October, even as teachers we all thought, oh, this is really different to what we're used to. So it's done in quite a specific way. So if we can kind of give you some tools as parents to be singing from the same hymn sheet as us, that's the kind of idea of today. So I'm not going to give you all, all the background theory, and we used to explain why we use phonics. Phonics has been such an established way of teaching reading now. I think we just accept it is the most valid way of teaching children to read. But what I thought would be more helpful is for you to know exactly how we do actually use the Read Write Inc programme and some little bits of the nuances that you might not have been aware of with the stuff coming home, so that you can best support your child at home and be consistent with our approach. So that's sort of the main objective for today. So Read Write Inc phonics was developed by a lady called Ruth Miskin, and all the research now basically says that if you don't get reading right, everything else in the curriculum can't really build. So if that's the most fundamental thing that we achieve as a school, that's what we want to do. I'm sure a lot of you realise that in our recent Ofsted, it was one of the things that we were sort of picked up on. And one of the things that Ofsted want now is they call it fidelity. They want you to choose a programme and stick to it without any flexibility, which for teachers who want to be creative can be quite frustrating because you're not allowed to be anymore. And when I first started teaching sort of 20 years ago, you kind of got told this is a vague idea, go and make it your own, make it exciting. Well, that's not the way of it now. And the teachers sort of joke now that they've turned into Read Write Inc robots because we all do it exactly the same. But actually for your children, that's really good because whatever year group or whatever teacher they're with, they will know what to expect, they know what a phonics session looks like, and they know the things they can use to help them, which is the most important part of keeping it consistent. So Read Write Inc phonics is for children. We start it in the nursery. It's much more low-key in the nursery. It's about just getting that familiarity with the letter shapes and starting to recognise particular sounds like the beginning of their name, so they might know that they've got an AF and that sort of thing in their name. But it's not any more intense than that. In reception, it ramps up really quickly, and I'm sure those of you with children in reception will have realised, oh gosh, this is quite quick. And actually, from next year, the government now want children to start in the second week of reception, whereas it used to be the sixth week. So they're really, really rigorous with the way they want you to be taught phonics. So basically, they start in reception, but the programme can continue for some children until they're in year 3 or year 4. Children do learn to read at different paces, and that is absolutely fine. So in Read Write Inc, they don't really say this is the reception level, this is the year 1 level, this is the year 2 level. They just work through a set of colours and they work through them at their pace. So they start with ditty books, which are the red books, and they work all the way through to grey books. Now that could be for some children, they finish those grey books in the beginning of year 1. For other children, they might take until the middle of year 3. And that's absolutely fine because we're not all the same. We don't all have the same processing, we don't all have the same equipment in our brains. So actually, we sort of support the children to work through it at their own pace, but still obviously trying to keep that kind of rigour that we're looking for. So what I'm trying to say to you is if you've got a child in year 1 and you've got a friend of a child in year 1, they won't be necessarily on the same level, and that is right, and it is nothing to worry about. So please don't get in a tears about, oh gosh, they should be moving. The other thing with progress is that it often goes, plateau, up. You're not expecting an upward trajectory all the time, and that would actually be wrong, and it wouldn't be what we'd be expecting to see. So don't worry if your child does seem to stay at the same colour for a while and then shoot up. All of those things are normal. So you'll probably all seen these reading books that come home, and within a daily session, your children will have done other things that lead up to being able to read that reading book. So being able to read that book is really like the culmination of a whole sort of mini unit of work. So in Read Write Inc, they get a week where they pretty much focus on reading one book. Now, before they do that, they will teach all the sounds in isolation that your child is going to need to encounter in that book. And the thing about effective phonics teaching is that your child should never be asked something where they don't know. So if they don't know a sound in their book, that's something that we need to address, because actually they shouldn't get a book with any sounds that they don't know. And that was the problem in the old days with the bit and chip books or all the kind of the coloured scheme book, because often you get sent home a pink book or a red book and they throw in the word you or the, or they throw in a ch when we've not had no problem when we've not taught ch. So this is really specific, it's really vigorous, so they will only get books with the sounds that they have already encountered. So it's really carefully tailored. So on your table, I've put, because it's always useful to have one of these sounds, I've put your a sheet of all the sounds, and in Read Write Inc there's 3 steps. So they start off with step 1, they move on to step 2, and they go on to step 3. And step 1, helpfully on the handout, they don't actually tell you the rhyme that you need to go with it. Now in step 1, the rhymes are on this supplementary sheet. All the rhyme does is sort of remind them, trigger them how to form that letter. So as well as them actually remembering the sound itself, in step 1, it's also a trigger for them to remember the shape of the letter. So if you think that they learn the sound so what we would have called M, they know that it's Maisie, Mountain, Mountain, and that will help them remember that because it's got Maisie and Mountain. But it will also remind them of the shape, because Maisie is the first bit of the M, and then the 2 mountains are the shape of the letter. So it's a kind of double whammy there. On the back, you've got the step 2 sounds and the step 3 sounds. Now, your child will be taught the technical words, and they don't think that they're difficult because they've never been told they're difficult. It's because we think they're difficult because we didn't learn them at school. But if you see 2 letters together, but they make one sound, such as A, that's called a digraph. So di is always 2 things, isn't it? So that's how you remember it. If you see 3 letters together, like I in the word high or flight, that's called a trigraph, and we always say remember a triangle or a tricycle to the children to remember it's 3 letters making 1 sound. So they are called digraphs and trigraphs, and the children don't bat an eyelid about those. They just, oh, that's a digraph, that's a trigraph. But for us, it's difficult. To help them remember those, each digraph or trigraph has a little rhyme. So when we teach them, they get presented, for example, Miss Smith's sound today was oi. So they see that they have to read it first, but then they say, oh look, here's a little boy who's so spoiled. He gets so many toys, his mum and dad spoil the boy. And then we do a lot of overlearning. It's very repetitive. It's spoil the boy, oi. Spoil the boy, oi. spoil the boy, 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 spoil the boy, oh, catch you out, all that kind of jazz. So that is how we get that sound in. When they are securing that sound, we then go on to what are called green words. So if you've heard them talk about green words, that is a word where basically they have all the tools now to read this word. So they know the sound j, they know the sound oi, and they know the sound So we will say these magic words. You might have heard them saying a lot at school. So every time they approach a word, we say special friends, Fred talk, read the word. Now, special friends are all your digraphs and trigraphs. So as you can see in the words, they put a line under it. We call it a sausage or a chip because they like to talk about chips and peas or sausage and peas. So that is your special friend. So before they're even allowed to start reading the word, you have to say, oh, special friends. Now, if it was the word cat, they'd just go, no, no special friends. In this word, they'd say, oh yeah, oi. So you'd say special friends, oi. Fred talk, j, oi, read the word, join. Now, Fred is this little frog who comes along to all our lessons, and the kind of gimmick with him is that he can't blend. He can only read in Fred talk. So Fred talk is what we used to call robot talk, when you just read sound by sound. So you'd say special friends, oi, Fred talk, j, oi, read the word, join. So that's the rigmarole that you go through with each word. And at home, when you get the reading books, you get a few green words at the beginning of the book to practice. So if you want to be being consistent, it would be really nice when you read these words for you to say, oh, special friends, no, Fred talk, read the word, pop. So you can do that procedure with each of the words, and then it'll be nice and consistent for the children at home. They've also got at the front of their books a reminder of all the sounds they're going to need for this book. So again, you can just say, let's do speedy sounds. And you just quickly with your finger, you can go, first we'll do them in order. Now the ones in circles are the ones that they think they might struggle with or that they really want you to focus on. So I always say circle first. So, and then off you go in order. And then you would say, oh, challenge, let's do it out of order. So that's just what we do at school. And these are the same books that they will have read at school. So if you can do it consistently, your child won't feel thrown. Now, got ahead of my slides, so just do this one. So the green words we've spoken about. I wanted to talk about red words as well, because red words are the words that don't follow the rules. So as much as we go on about phonics being the best way, a lot of the words are what we call, they're a little bit naughty. They don't follow the rules. So what we would do with a word like of, so it sounds like of the. So we'd say red word of, and then we go, oh, tricky letter, is a tricky letter of, and then we just overlearn it like that. So you point out the tricky letter, you sort of say, oh, that should be a but it's not, and that's your red word. So they're just the ones that don't follow the rules. You just say to them, you just need to remember them, take a picture, practice, 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 and again, when you get out your reading book at home, there are the red words, and they underline the bit that doesn't follow the rule. So in the word said, that if they would be taught makes an A sound, because it's like the snail in the rain sound on your sheet. But in this word, it's making the sound F. So you go, oh, tricky letters, and just point out that it's not following the rule, and you go, oh, red word, said, and just practice it like that. So that's what your books look like that are coming home, and that's what those sections at the front are for. Yeah, so as I said, the children in the school, we don't group them by age or class. So they are grouped by their progress, and they are grouped by where they are, so that they are reading text and seeing sounds that they can read. We reassess all the children from reception up to year 3 every 6 weeks at this school at the moment, which is my job. I've got spreadsheets coming out of my ears, but it means that we always know they're exactly where they need to be. And what I've noticed is that the progress is so rapid that every 6 weeks I am changing the groups, I am readjusting them. Some groups are about 6 or 7 children. Some groups, the maximum we've got is like 25, but we do have up to 10 groups of phonics running at 9 o'clock every morning. So they are having a really targeted, intense hour of phonics every day, and they're not just in their class group. So it's a bit of a logistical nightmare for us, but for the children, it means that they're absolutely working at the level they need to be and that they are moving on as soon as they're able to. So as I said, please don't worry too much if your child isn't in the correct, not in the correct group, if they're not in the same as their classmates. Now, one-to-one tutoring would be what we do if your child isn't sort of making the progress we would hope. So your child's class teacher would mention that if it was happening and just say, actually, just to help them close that gap, we're going to have every day a little bit of an extra session, and that's normally a 5 to 10 session burst with their class teacher, either in the afternoon or later on in the morning, just so they can revisit and keep up. So we've talked about that. I just wanted to show you a little video actually. So I've shown you all the different sounds on the sheets you've got in front of you. There's another expression you might hear them say. So if they say, oh, it's a bouncy sound, those are sounds that you could almost pretend you're bouncing the ball when you say them. So like those kind of words. If they say a stretchy sound, you couldn't bounce that. You would go, that's difficult. You go, So that's the discrepancy between bouncy and stretchy sounds. So I'm going to show you a little video that will hopefully give you a little bit of an idea about why it's really important to say the sounds in a way that we call purely. So if you're saying the sound purely, it means that you literally just say the sound. So if it was the letter D, you would say D, not D. Okay, and it's going to explain why. But I just thought I'd take that out to you. Let's see if I can. So we're just going to watch a little video. It's only a couple of minutes.
When teaching our child the speed sounds, it's very important that you don't add an R onto the end of consonant sounds. Say not M, not F, and not L. This takes some practice, but if your child learns to pronounce the sounds as pure sounds, they will find it easier later to put the sounds together to make a word. For example, it is easier to put the sounds M, at together than M, at, T. As you start to teach your child the first group of sounds on the flashcards, you will notice that each sound is either stretchy or bouncy. 5-year-old Sylvie will now show you how to say the sounds.
These are the set one sounds. These are the stretchy sounds. Or, These are the bouncy sounds. These are the set two sounds. These are the long vowels. A, E, I, U, R, O, ow, oi. These sounds to learn. I, your.
Right, so I don't know about you, but when I first started thinking about phonics, I didn't even realise half of those sounds existed. So I think we do, it's quite a tall order, isn't it, that we place on our children to be able to learn all of these things. But actually, because they are sort of immersed in it and they don't know any different, the progress they make is really impressive and it's really rapid. So I think it's maybe a bit scarier for us than it is for them. So we've talked about Fred and Fred Talk earlier. Fred can also be used to teach your child how to spell words. So when you're teaching them to read with Fred, it's about him hearing sound by sound, so the voice. But you can also say, oh, let's squeeze the sounds to spell that word. So if you wanted to spell the word cat with your child, you'd say, squeeze the sounds in cat. What sounds can you hear? K, at. What was the first sound? K. Write it down. What was the second sound? Write it down. So as well as being a reading technique, Fred and being able to segment your sounds and chop them up is also a writing technique. So that's how we teach writing at school as well. So you can, if you tell them to squeeze their sounds, use their Fred fingers, that will be something to stay consistent again with the way they're being taught at school. So, like I said, when they bring home their reading book, it really is the sort of culmination of a lot of work at school. So the point, I think, in the past with, I know when my children started bringing home their reading books and I was really excited, if they were like too easy, I'd almost be like, oh, this is too easy for you. This isn't enough of a challenge. That is really not the point of this. You want them to be reading this book fluently. So the big thing that we're looking for is fluency. So when they get to you, they should have seen this book at least 3 times. So by the time they get to you, they're coming to you as an expert, and it's your job to be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe how brilliantly you can read this book. So we're going to ban the phrase, this is too easy, or this is easy for you. Oh, you've whizzed through that. You've got to celebrate how brilliantly they've read it, because 100% at the beginning of the week or the unit when they started reading that book, they wouldn't have been reading it like that. And because they've revisited the sounds and read over it so many times, they've built the fluency. And coming home to you is like the showing off. So that is why when they come home, you might think, oh, is this actually a challenge for them? It shouldn't feel like that. It should feel like, oh, great, look, they can fluently read it. And then it's your job. You might say, oh, I wonder what kind of voice that person would have had. Or you can start asking questions about what's going to happen next, or why the character decided to do that, or what the word in there was chosen for. Why did the author choose that word? Did it make you think of anything else? Have we read another story like this? A lot of the read writing books do echo sort of traditional tales. There's like the Duck Chick that's about the ugly duckling, and there's books that recognize, kind of tie in with other books. So you might be able to say, oh, this is a bit like Cinderella or things like that. They're the sort of discussions you're having. You shouldn't be a parent at home slogging, trying to get those sounds into their brain. That's the job of the school. That's the job of the phonics sessions. Your job is to just say you're wonderful. Look how brilliant you've read that book. So that's the 3 reads thing that's probably the biggest change. If you've been a parent at this school for a few years, that isn't how it used to be. In fact, we used to be told to send home a book a level above their ability level so that they can have a stretch at home with a one-to-one adult. But actually, now they sort of feel that's not the role of a parent. You've had a long day, the child's probably exhausted from 6 hours at school and is being taught in such a specific way that all really we want to do is reinforce that and give them the opportunity to practice. So I've talked to you about Special Friends Fred Talk. I did this all in the wrong order, didn't I? I've talked to you about red words. So the children will bring home, as I said, their phonics books. Now, sometimes they might bring home a book that looks like this. This is just the same set of words, the same set of sounds in a slightly different story format. Now, it's just because Read Write Inc are a bit mean about how you buy books. And if you buy all the books again, you can buy them all, whereas you can buy smaller packs of these and they're the same sounds and the same words. So unfortunately, that's a budgeting thing, but it is exactly the same thing. So sometimes they might have a book that they haven't read in class to the same level of familiarity, but they will have read all the words and all the sounds. So if you get one of these, just be aware, oh, this one might not be quite so familiar, but it's still got the same toolkit associated, so it should be fine. Also, we are encouraging the children to bring home books from the library. They are able to go and borrow library books whenever they want. And those books will be much harder, might be much harder than they can actually read on their own. And that's to still make sure they're getting a broad reading diet and they're being exposed to all sorts of different books from all sorts of different genres at different levels. So that is that. So what can you do at home? So use the pure sounds like we spoke about. No us, which they call a schwa, if you want the posh word for it. So they use an it's a schwa. Use Fred Talk to help you
sounding out words, and also if you want to spell words, if you're writing a birthday card or anything like that, using your friend talk. Listen to them read the same story every day. Now, I know that can feel really repetitive and boring, and if they are starting to look bored, obviously you know your child best, you read the room. If they're not in the mood, that's fine, don't push it. But a good way is to say, oh, show grandma today how brilliant you read the book. Shall we ring Auntie Lucy on FaceTime and you can read the book to that? Those are the kind of things, just so they're still getting that repetition to build that fluency. What you're looking for is across the week they have that book for the fluency, so the speed and the right intonation, so when they're reading it, it sounds right. So you can be modelling that to them. So if they're reading a sentence and it sounds really like this, even though it was a question, maybe you want to say, if I was reading that, I think I would have made it sound like that. Can you see how I went up at the end? Try it. So you're working on that kind of stuff with them to make it sound fluent and make it just sound like they are a reader voice. And then also carry on reading all those lovely, richer texts with them at home, because read write ink books as technically are brilliant. They're not the most inspiring magical stories. They don't have that awe and wonder I'm sure you've all picked up on. So don't deny them of that because they've got to read their read write ink book. They need a night off from read write ink. No one's going to die. Just read them something magical and inspiring, and that's lovely too. Now on the website, the Ruth Miskin website, so you go to ruthmiskin.com, there is a whole section with loads of free films for parents, which I'm sure you're all going to go home and watch now because they're so exciting. But in all seriousness, if you do want to check something out or you're not quite sure, you go to Ruth Miskin and it's the free films tab, and there's a whole section of parent films. And you go home and think, oh, I can't remember that. They're all there. The one I showed you about the pronunciations, all that is all there. And I think that's about it. So if you have any questions, ask away. Anyone?
Leah doesn't have a read book. She just has Paddington, obviously from the library.
Oh, right.
Should she have one in her book bag?
What year? Sorry, I didn't catch the name.
Reception, sorry.
Yes,
yes.
no, she should do. Yes.
She
Now-
hasn't had one for quite a long time.
Okay,
So I
so
assume that wasn't.
I will check with her teacher.
Thank
She
you.
definitely should have been. Now, what I should have said is actually they start off on the Ditties scheme, and the Ditties are actually worksheets that are printed out.
We've got those.
So if she's getting that, yes, that's what she should be getting. You'll find quite soon she'll be progressing onto the little red books that look. I've got one there. Yeah, she'll be getting those too. So that's the next one up. So it's Ditty worksheets, Ditty books. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Is it still part of like a school day for once a week for them to read with their teachers? Because I feel like that would really be happening a lot.
Well, the rewriting session every day is an hour. Now, within that session, it is literally an hour of reading. So the teacher will read with every child in that session. They have what's called their perfect partners. One of them's a teacher with the sticks, one of them's the reader, and then they swap. And the teacher will go around every group and will hear every child read. So it is happening. What isn't happening so religiously is it all being recorded in the reading diary. Because if you think, I don't know, it depends how quickly you write, and my writing is dreadful, so it shouldn't be based on mine. But teachers who have the beautiful writing that they should have, it will probably take them a good 2 or 3 minutes to do that. And if you think you've got 30 kids, that's an hour out of the teacher's day when they should be teaching the kids. So we've kind of drawn back on that interaction in the reading diary, but I can absolutely assure you it is happening in the lesson.
Changed slightly.
It has changed, hence today to try to explain it all to you because it's different. It's very different.
Right, so when Sophie's reading these books, sometimes she's guessing, she's clearly read them and read this exactly as you're saying, they're kind of built up, but she'll guess and then she'll be really frustrated when I'm trying to correct her because she's going, I know that this is the story and it's that she's jumping ahead because she's remembered what's happening in the picture.
Yes.
Any advice?
What I would do there is a kind of pick your battles approach. If they're kind of doing that, just say, right, we're going to do something different. Instead of reading the words, I want you to spot all the up on this page, or I want you to spot all the chunks on this page. Or one of the words says shop, which one is it? Just mix it up a bit like that if they're getting, because I see what you mean.
Because she's remembered it, and so she's then trying to whiz through.
Yeah, so just
quite the point.
and at that level, actually, it doesn't matter so much because we're not looking at comprehension. The words, it really is just a decoding exercise. So if you can find other ways to get into practice decoding, which aren't based on guess, yes, absolutely, that would be the way.
Are there any sort of
along similar lines to that question, how can you identify that they haven't just memorised the story and they are still reading and just using it as a prompt? Is there anything you can tell? 'Cause obviously
I think
that's all-
intonation, again, is quite a good tell. So if it sounds quite robotic and it's not quite, having the nuances of where it should inflect and change, that's a good thing. But also just, like I said, just to do a few little quick checks, like, oh, the word there is on this page 4 times. Can you find it? Or there's a sh at the end of 4 words. Where are they? That kind of thing. Just to dig into,
Okay, cool. Do they go to the library during their phonics sessions, or is it another point?
It's another part of the day.
Yeah, I need to get him to go. Because he only reads football books at home. He's like, it's one-dimensional, but that's fine. I'll try and.
No, to be fair, I think in year 1, that
Yeah.
needs to be facilitated by the teacher.
Okay,
So that's
alright,
something
yeah,
that I'm going to
fine.
have a push on as well, because I've noticed that,
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of the same stuff that's happening in year 3 as well. So.
Yeah, okay, cool. Thank you.
Oh, yeah,
Hi.
Daniel will do it, but there's some days that she's so tired, she's just not able. So what do I do? Do I write in the book and say that I've attempted?
Well, you
Because if I'm going 3 days in a row, I can't force
No, I think you're absolutely right. Don't force her, because you don't want to switch them off to it, and be reassured that she's having an hour a day.
It being.
No, exactly.
Do you know, I don't force her to, she's not.
I think you're absolutely right. I would, honestly, you can always think in your head, they've had that hour today, they have had that. You can put the date and just say, we would know, not in the mood, or try again tomorrow. We're all mummies, we all know, don't worry.
At what point do they start to learn what I would call the big letters as well? Because the only thing I've found with my year 3 as well, she found it, she's still sometimes, but she still says Africa. And I feel like during she should be saying ABC when she's saying something.
Yeah.
How does that transition work?
In
Are
year
they
3, that they start actually using the letter names alongside, or once they've finished the year. So they finished read, writing, phonics mid-year 2. From that point onwards, we will be using it alongside, but there's no point where we stand in front of all the children and say, right, from now on, you are not allowed to use your phonic names. So I still teach in year 6 and year 5 sometimes, and they'll still be using and if that works for them, it's fine. But from year 3, we would expect them to be getting a bit more automatic. So reception in year 1, it's not a problem at all.
Are they still seeing and learning? Because obviously at the beginning of the sentence, you'll have capital A's.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes I forget, so that's not
No, that's all part of the writing, but in reception, not so much. I mean, we are trying to work towards, as one of the early learning goals at the end of reception, for them to have a recognition and an awareness of capital letters, but by no means using them consistently yet. So within all the writing part of the hour, so the hour is divided about 45 minutes, about 40 minutes reading, 20 minutes writing. Within the writing, it's all modelled from about, in the ditty level, which is the first level, not so much, but after ditty, so when they're in green, purple, it is modelled. That doesn't mean they'll automatically use it, but they will eventually get there. On every writing activity they do, I've put some writing books on the table for you to look at. These are the writing books. I'll just show you. So every writing activity they do, it has a checkbox, and always the first check is capital letters. So it's referred to every day, and then the next check is finger spaces, then full stops, and then some specific spelling patterns that we want them to look at. So that's really integral to the programme every day. So don't worry, it will get there. We didn't expect it at Ivy's stage maybe yet, but we're starting to see it.
At what stage, so in reception, they're encouraged to read 3 times, but what stage do they have to start reading 5 times a week? So that's encouraged.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, in reception, 3 is the guide book. If they would read 5 times, that's great. I would rather people don't get too hung up on, I have got to read. That's why we took away, do you remember we used to have the stamp for reading 5 a day? I don't believe in that for exactly the reasons you just said. They're not robots, and actually we all live in a very busy society, and life is, bonkers sometimes, isn't it? So actually to reward children for something that's often even out of their control just doesn't feel fair. So just aim for little and often, as regularly as you can, but
we are not in the kind of school that are going to be saying, oh, you should have done more. And just remember, they get every day an hour of reading. So it's not the end of the world. Obviously, the more you do at home, the more familiar, and it's about doing it in different contexts. Because sometimes you find with children, they can do it at school, but then you're in, I don't know, a friend's house, trying to read something, a birthday card or something, and they don't use it. So it's about switching contexts to help them. But you know, I don't want anybody to be, there's enough mum guilt and dad guilt in the world. We don't need more. So yeah, just try your best, but nobody is saying it's got to be this number anymore. So don't worry about that. I'm aware that reception will be being dismissed and year one will be being soon. So if you've got any more emails, it's misshare@Bisley, all the usual stuff. So do email me or come and find me. I'm always about it. And thank you so much for coming, everyone. Thank you. Yeah. My knowledge on my head. Let me just stop this.
So much so that she's got all the